her body burned hot like lava inside a volcano. The only one who could save her now was the man before her eyes. She clung to his icy, marble-like skin, her desperation to survive leaving her with no other choice but to surrender herself. After the pain ended, pleasure began to fly, like fireworks exploding inside her mind, making her feel as though she was in the middle of a sea of fire. Drifting in and out, there was no escape. "Hey, wake up. The air conditioning is cold here. Don't sleep or you'll catch a cold." The weight on her shoulder woke Ningxi, her eyes opening disorientedly to see the nurse standing before her. She felt slightly embarrassed and her small face blushed red. She could not avoid the nurse's gaze. Damn, it happened so long ago already. Flashes of that night when she had gotten drunk and fooled around with Su Yan would often appear in her dreams. Your favorite stories on NOVL.com. Because she had consumed too much alcohol, she couldn't remember much of what had transpired that night. She didn't know how she could face Brother Yan. The nurse saw that she was awake and passed the paper in her hand to her. "You forgot to take your pregnancy report with you. Dr. Zhang would have wanted you to come back again next week if you had left it here." Ningxi received the report with a sweet smile and put it away safely in her purse. Su Yan had been studying abroad and would return today. When Ningxi thought about meeting him tonight, she couldn't help but feel nervous. Because Su Yan had gone to a very remote place, she hadn't been able to contact him until their child had become 7 months old. Thinking of the shock Su Yan had received from knowing about her pregnancy, Ningxi was tense. Perhaps her pregnancy was making her rather sensitive and on edge? Ningxi felt that Su Yan was not as happy about the news as she was. The doctors had reassured her that with their first child, men would always appear indifferent and in denial at first. However, the matter of getting married, she couldn't possibly mention it to him first, right? When she left the hospital, the sky was clear and the sun was scorching. Supporting her hip with one hand, Ningxi was about to call for a taxi when suddenly a flashy red sports car sped towards her. Ningxi's heart skipped a beat as she immediately retreated backward. The sound of brakes hurt her ears as the red sports car stopped, brushing the edges of her clothes. Ningxi was so scared, her heart almost stopped beating, and she could barely stand straight. Opening the door in a tight-fitting red dress which revealed a lot of cleavage, Ning Shueluo stepped out of the car. "Ning Shueluo, are you crazy?" Looking at her, Ning Shueluo laughed with deep meaning. Crossing her arms, she sauntered over to stand in front of Ningxi. In her high heels, she looked down arrogantly at big-bellied Ningxi. "What? Are you scared I'll crash into you and kill the bastard inside your stomach?" Ningxi immediately protected her belly and took a few more steps backward while worriedly observing her. "Ning Shueluo, don't cross the line." She always knew that Ning Shueluo was hostile towards her, but Ningxi had never thought she could say such poisonous things. "I crossed the line? I should say you crossed the line. Getting drunk and then getting pregnant with a stranger's child. And yet you still want Su Yan to play the dad." "Ningxi, do you still have any face left?" Ningxi froze and asked, "What did you say? Do you really believe the person you slept with that night was Su Yan?" Ning Shueduo laughed hysterically. "You always say you grew up with Su Yan, that you're childhood sweethearts, yet you don't even know what his body is like." Ningxi's face got paler and whiter with every word she said. Standing here on such a blistering hot day, her whole body felt ice cold. That's right, that man that night. She had thought that perhaps because of puberty, his body was bulkier than she had originally imagined. But with Ning Shueluo's reminder, she now suddenly recalled that besides his build, nothing else about that man resembled Su Yan. "I'll tell you the truth right now. That night you drank wine, which I spiked. You were so lustful and unsatisfied that I found 2 good men for you. Who knew that you wouldn't appreciate my kindness? You even barged into a stranger's room and took advantage of that man," Ning Shueluo said disgustedly. "Brother Yan is far too gentle and kind for his own good, because when you woke up, he was afraid you wouldn't be able to accept the truth, so he told you that it was him that night." Ningxi had started trembling as she heard this. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer and grabbed Ning Shueluo by her arm. "Why do you treat me this way? Why? Haven't you screwed me over enough?" Ning Shueluo furrowed her brow, and just as she was about to push Ningxi away, she noticed Su Yan approaching them behind Ningxi. Her voice immediately softened and her expression turned pitiful. Older sister, I know I'm wrong. If you want to hit or yell, do it to me. Please don't blame Brother Yan. Ning Shi paused, and in the next second, Ning Shueluo fell to the ground as if Ning Shi had pushed her. Ning Shi, what are you? Someone said accusingly behind her. Ning Shi turned around and saw an unfriendly-looking Su Yan. Su Yan brushed past her and helped Ning Shueluo up. Shueluo, are you all right? Ning Shueluo pressed nearly her entire body against Su Yan. Brother Yan, I didn't mean it. I really know I'm wrong. This only happened because I wronged older sister. That's enough. Don't blame yourself. No matter what happens, you have me. Su Yan patted her shoulder and helped her into the car. I'll explain everything to Ning Shi. Ning Shi's mind was blank as she watched Su Yan stride towards her and open his mouth. He spoke for a long time. He spoke of the past and their happy childhood. He spoke of the struggle he went through when he fell in love with Ning Shueluo. He spoke of his fury and anger when he found out Ning Shueluo had schemed against Ning Shi. He spoke of the fright and regret he felt when he found out about Ning Shi's pregnancy. He spoke about how he accepted Ning Shueluo's apology. In the end, he said, Ning Shi, I'm sorry. I can't marry you, not because of that night nor because of the child that I don't want, but because I cannot wrong Shueluo and because I can't lie to myself about my feelings. He and Ning Shueluo had been traveling outside the country in the past few months, and having been with her morning and night, it was harder to separate from her now more than ever. Although he had initially wanted to ease Ning Shi's pain by pretending that he did indeed have intercourse with her, in his heart, he had already chosen Ning Shueluo. That was why, after finding out that Ning Shi was pregnant, he couldn't stop himself from immediately going to the Ning family and explaining everything to the second master. Despite this, he had not told the truth to Ning Shi herself. You mean, Su Yan, from the start you knew that it was Ning Shueluo who drugged me and ruined my innocence? Just because you wanted to protect her, you told me the person that night was you? Ning Shi finally found her voice, but could only look numbly at Su Yan. Ning Shi, Shueluo didn't mean it. She's still young, so she might be impulsive. Then what about me? Ning Shi looked up at Su Yan hopelessly. Did you never once consider what it would be like for me? Su Yan did not speak, and there was a long moment of silence before he reached out for Ning Shi's hand. The sun is too hot, let's return home. Don't touch me! Ning Shi immediately slapped his hand away and laughed aloud. Ning Shi felt that her whole life until now had been a joke. For Su Yan, she had worked hard to get into B University to come to the city where he lived. For Su Yan, she had abandoned her dream to become an actress. So that their family statuses would match, she had pushed aside her adoptive parents in order to return to the Ning family. And she had stupidly tried to please those so-called upper-class families. And as a result of all her efforts, she only received, I cannot wrong Shueluo. Ning Shueluo had not only stolen her identity and her birth parents, but today, she had even stolen the person she loved most. Ning Shueluo was young, but even so, how could she be forgiven? If she really did forgive her, then who could she blame for her life's misfortune? She didn't even know who the man from that night was. Ning Shi covered her face, her body quivering, for she had reached the limit of her despair. Su Yan watched as Ning Shi mindlessly started to cross the road and was about to chase after her when from behind, Ning Shueluo tugged on his sleeve. Brother Yan, where are you going? In Su Yan's moment of hesitation, there was a loud bang. Ning Shi was thrown back on the road and she hit the ground hard. Help! Help! A pregnant lady has been hit! In the piercing light, Ning Shi could make out two silhouettes and faces which made her want to throw up. She felt her stomach cramp and she slowly started to lose consciousness from the intense pain. She blinked and the blood trickling down her forehead flowed into her eyes. She entered a world of darkness. 5 years later, in Eden Wine Bar, in a corridor on the top floor, Ning Shi had accompanied the investors in drinking all night. She was experiencing a splitting headache and was trying to find a quiet place to refresh herself. She didn't think that Chang Li would follow her out, and she could only prepare herself mentally to deal with her. Sister Chang, do you have something to say? Ning Shi, let me ask you, did you apply to audition for the female lead in Less Than the World GT, yes and? You cannot go tomorrow. Even though Chang Li was Ning Shi's manager, here she was advising her not to go to an audition for such a huge role in the entertainment industry. Ning Shi was unsurprised at her words and merely raised an eyebrow as she asked, Reason? First of all, you kept quiet about this and did not tell me, yet you still dare to ask me for a reason? Not to mention, don't you know the company has already arranged for Ning Shueluo to audition for the role? If I audition for the role, that doesn't clash with the company's arrangements. Ning Shi smiled at her. Did Ning Shueluo ask you to speak to me about this? Is she scared a little unknown rookie like me might actually steal her role? Do you even have the talent to compete with her for roles? You're insane to even talk about such an impossible dream. Let me tell you now, don't waste your effort. The Ning family invested 30 million yuan into this drama, so the role will definitely go to Ning Shueluo. Is that so? Then why do you need to be so nervous? You're my artiste. You have to listen to my arrangements for you, Chang Li said as a matter of course. Oh, so Sister Chang, you do know I'm an artiste under you. Ning Shi, I don't have time to waste with you. Since you don't accept my kindness and want things the hard way, don't blame me for being merciless. As soon as she said the words, Ning Shi felt a force hit her, and caught off guard, she was pushed into the bar's storeroom, her cell phone also stolen away. Bang! The door slammed shut. The footsteps outside the door gradually became quieter as they went further away. Knowing that shouting would be useless, Ning Shi leaned against the door and slid down to sit on the floor without a word. When Ning Shi had just joined the company, Ning Shueluo still knew how to restrain herself and had ordered Chang Li to arrange various villain roles for her. Lately, it was becoming too much that even such underhanded tricks like locking her in a storeroom were being used. If she couldn't get the role she auditioned for this time, she definitely needed to find a way to leave Starlight Entertainment. As she pondered this, she suddenly heard a small sound. Don't tell me there's a rat? Ning Shi glanced in the direction the sound had come from and was shocked. Behind a stack of boxes, she could see a little boy. The kid appeared to be around 4 to 5 years old, with features like finely carved jade and white and soft like a small bun. He was hiding in the corner shivering, his black eyes full of wariness and alarm. Why is there a kid in this bar's storeroom? No way some customer could be preposterous enough to bring a child to a bar, right? Hey, little bun, who are you? How did you get in here? Did you sneak in? Did someone lock you in here? Do you eat candy? After asking for what felt like half a day, the child still did not speak, and his trembling only became worse, like frightened prey. Ning Shi stopped talking. This didn't have anything to do with her anyway. Thus, an adult and a child each took a corner of their own as they continued to coexist idly. At this time, the ceiling light started to flicker and then went out. In the darkness, Ning Shi could hear a chattering sound. After carefully analyzing the sound, she realized it was a noise made by the chattering of teeth. Ning Shi couldn't help but laugh and faced the little bun. Are you afraid of the dark? The chattering stopped for a second and then began even louder than before. Oh, how could he be such a coward? Ning Shi patted her butt as she got up and walked towards the kid. The little bun was so scared of Ning Shi, his entire face went pale with fright. Meanwhile, she sat down next to the little bun and didn't do anything except close her eyes to sleep. All night, Chang Li had dragged her around to drink with people. It would have been even more surprising if her head wasn't hurting. After waking up from a short nap, Ning Shi felt that her leg was warm. She looked down to see the little bun clinging to her, clutching the hem of what she was wearing. Ning Shi couldn't help but laugh. When she had still been living in the countryside, she had raised a cat. It had been especially cowardly and was deeply afraid of people. The moment it saw anyone, the cat would run. However, if you didn't pay the cat any attention, it would slowly lower its guard after understanding you didn't mean it any harm, and the cat would then start to cling to you, and even climb onto your knee to sleep. The little bun noticed her gaze and his small face went red with embarrassment, but he no longer showed any fear like before, and instead was filled with curiosity. He really resembled that cat, so much so that even his facial expression was the same. Ning Shi curled her lips and felt her hand itching until she couldn't restrain herself, and tousled the little boy's hair. When she touched him, she frowned. Why was his forehead so hot? Do you have a fever? Chang Li was going to lock her up in here at least until tomorrow, after the audition was over, and maybe even longer after that. If this child were to continue burning with fever, it could prove to be quite fatal. In her moment of panic, she realized something wasn't right. The light in the storeroom had obviously died earlier, so why was there still light inside this place? Lifting her head, she realized there was a very small skylight overhead, which was letting light in. Searching the storeroom, Ningxi found a ladder, which she placed beneath the window. "Little Bun, come here. I'll help you escape." The little guy showed a reaction for the first time. He shook his little head and seemed determined not to leave. Looking at him, Ningxi understood what he meant and smiled while pinching his cheeks. "Why do you speak of loyalty? Do you want to stay and suffer with me? Go up. The window's too small for me, so I can't leave with you. But you can head out and find someone to come save me." Seeing the kid's hesitation, Ningxi picked him up directly and put him on the ladder. "Quick, be a man. Don't waver. I'll be down here guarding you." After finally delivering the child safely outside, Ningxi went down the ladder but started to feel dizzy. In that moment of sudden lightheadedness, she slipped and fell. Outside the window, the little bun's originally expressionless face contorted in terror as he witnessed the scene. Ningxi forced a word out, "Leave." Under the starlight, her face was pale and fragile, but it did not overshadow her ethereal beauty. Her eyes, especially, held a sparkling and spirited elegance that mirrored an ocean brimming with a constellation of stars. She was no longer the same country bumpkin and ugly duckling from the past. However, what use was that? Ningxi smiled bitterly. She hadn't gotten her revenge yet, and here she was, about to die from a fall. At least, before dying, she had accomplished a good deed. She had saved the little bun. If her child had not died that year, he would probably have been the same age. 5 years ago, after that car accident, the Ning family, ashamed of her, had sent her to M country, to a miscellaneous university for profligate, second-generation rich kids. They had left her to fend for herself. She had withdrawn from that school to apply for Nanja University, where she went crazy learning whatever she could. Because she wanted to defeat Ning Zhueluo, to reclaim all of what should have been hers. Most importantly, acting was her ultimate dream. After returning to the country, she had used her looks and talent to gain Chang Li's attention. She then successfully entered one of the biggest entertainment companies, Starlight Entertainment. Originally, the path under Starlight should have been vast with possibilities. But then Ning Zhueluo also entered the company, and then bribed Chang Li to constantly suppress Ningxi. Meanwhile, inside the guest room of the Eden Wine Bar, the atmosphere was very tense. The bar owner, manager, security, and all related staff trembled together in a huddle, as if they were all about to face imminent disaster. This was all because the Lu Corporation's young heir, Lu Tingxiao's precious son, had gone missing in their bar. Sitting on the sofa, Lu Tingxiao's expression was very cold. He was like an ice sculpture, without the slightest trace of emotion, but he exuded such tremendous pressure that everyone standing before him felt their legs shake, and their sweat fall like rain. No one dared to make a sound. At his feet, a young man cried while wiping his snot and tears. "Brother, I'm sorry, this is all my fault. I shouldn't have brought little treasure to a bar. If anything happens to him, I wouldn't be able to live with myself anymore." After he stopped talking, a kick flew at his chest. The sound of bone crunching caused goosebumps. Everyone who was present trembled a bit. Lu Jingli clutched his chest and coughed before climbing back up to resume groveling. Right now, his parents were on vacation outside the country and did not know that little treasure was missing. If they knew, they wouldn't do something so simple as a kick like his brother. They would carve him alive. Lu Jingli was feeling hopeless and pathetic when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Standing the closest to the door, the bar owner opened it and found it odd when he saw no one, but then he lowered his head and was stunned. Young master. Little treasure, my God. Little treasure, my darling, where have you been? Lu Jingli rolled himself up and hugged him tightly. He was so emotional, he cried bitterly while his snot ran freely. Everyone in the room was relieved and felt as though they'd survived a disaster. Lu Tingxiao walked a few steps towards the door. He grabbed Lu Jingli by the collar and threw him aside. He then knelt down to speak to his son. What is it? Finally, having escaped his second uncle's monstrous grip, Little Treasure seized Lu Tingxiao's hand and hurriedly pulled him forward. Lu Tingxiao drew closer to his son and could smell not only the scent of wine, but also a faint fragrance. It wasn't heavy like perfume, but more like flowers growing out of a glacier, emitting a light and cool scent. It gave him a sense of vague familiarity, but also a small dose of fear. Noticing that Lu Tingxiao was not moving, Little Treasure pointed in a direction with his small finger with an extremely worried expression. Lu Tingxiao picked his son up in his arms and started in the direction his son wanted him to go. Behind him, the remaining people looked at each other helplessly before following. 5 minutes later, the group was standing before the door to the bar's storeroom on the top floor. Little Treasure twisted his body to get down from his father's arms and started banging anxiously on the storeroom door. "What is it, Little Treasure? What's in there?" Lu Jingli's forehead was covered in sweat. Without expression, Lu Tingxiao ordered, "Open the door, yes, yes, yes." The bar owner repeatedly nodded his head, then turned around to look at the female manager beside him. "Manager Yi, why are you still just standing around? Open the door quickly. Where are the keys?" "Ah, open the door?" The female manager went rigid. What bad luck. That woman Ning Shi was still in there. She had promised Chang Li that she would lock her up in there at least until the audition was over. However, with the Lu family's 2 masters and her boss waiting, she couldn't say no. She could only tremble as she took out the keys to open the door. Once the door was opened, everyone saw a woman lying on the floor unconscious. "What is this? Why is there a woman in here?" The owner flew into a rage. I don't know. I checked this area earlier and there wasn't anybody here." The female manager hid her guilt as she defended herself. "Quick, let's just save her first and then discuss it." Just then, someone ran over to Ning Ji. Little Treasure threw himself onto Ning Ji, his expression fierce, not letting anyone approach her. President Lu, this. The bar owner felt helpless. He didn't understand at all how this situation had come about. Lu Tingxiao glanced coldly at the female manager's guilty expression, then looked at the ladder, which was under the skylight in the ceiling, big enough to allow a child through. He could roughly deduce what had happened here. He waved his hand to dismiss everyone, then walked over and directly picked the woman up in his arms. In his embrace, the soft, cool scent from before returned and was even more distinct. Seeing Lu Tingxiao pick her up, Little Treasure did not stop him, but his expression showed his unwillingness. It appeared as though he was saying that if he wasn't so small, he'd pick her up himself. In the First People's Republic Hospital in B City, by the time Ningxi woke up, it was already the next morning. When she opened her eyes, she could see a man sitting on a chair by the window. His long legs were casually crossed. He wore a slim-fitting tailored suit which emphasized his broad shoulders and slender waist. His white shirt was buttoned all the way up to the collar. He was bathed in sunlight, but his body appeared to be shrouded in an ancient frost. His cool and calm demeanor was like that of an olden-day emperor. The man noticed her observing him and directed a gaze as deep as the ocean at her. His chilling stare seemed to pierce through her. The look he gave her felt intrusive, like a sharp surgery knife dissecting her piece by piece. It made her bones shudder. Ningxi decided to join the battle, unwilling to lose to this stranger and his uncomfortable gaze. She asked impatiently, "Mister, if I may ask, how did I end up here?" "Did you see a little boy? He's 4 to 5 years old, doesn't like to speak, appears white and soft, but also a bit dull." Dull. The man raised an eyebrow at her description, then glanced to her right, his voice as cold as his appearance. "Are you talking about Little Treasure?" Ningxi quickly followed his line of sight and saw a white, soft little bun lying asleep on the small bed by her side. "Right, that's him. His name is Little Treasure?" Ningxi let out a sigh of relief and reached over to feel Little Treasure's forehead. His fever had already subsided. Before, when she had helped the child escape, she had regretted it a bit. He was just a child, and with a fever in such a rough place like that wine bar, what would she have done if something had happened to him? Ningxi then turned around to face the ice statue. "You are this child's." As soon as these words left her mouth, Ningxi realized she didn't even need to ask. The man and the child seemed to have come from the same mold. It was apparent that they were father and son. Still, the ice statue replied, "Father, hi beautiful, you're awake." "I'm Little Treasure's second uncle." Abruptly, a large face rushed over towards her, causing her to retreat backward until she saw the man's face and stopped. Lu Jingli? He was the Lu Corporation's second prince, Glory World Entertainment's boss, but leaving his stunning looks and titles aside, he was a playboy. He had made more scandalous appearances in the media than many celebrities and artistes. She could never mistake his face. If the ice statue was Little Treasure's father and Lu Jingli was Little Treasure's second uncle, Then wouldn't the ice statue be Lu Jingli's older brother, Lu Tingxiao? Lu Tingxiao was Jing City's famous god of fortune. His existence was like a king sans a crown. Who would have thought the child she had saved was the mysterious illegitimate son of Lu Tingxiao, the sparkling golden prince? Lu Tingxiao carefully sized up the woman on the hospital bed, scrutinizing her expression to see if it was real or fake. After a long time, he finally believed that she had not known about little treasure's identity and circumstances. He calmly said, "State your request." Ah, what request? Ningxi did not understand at all what he meant by those 3 words. My brother means to thank you for saving little treasure. So he's asking if you have any requests. Lu Jingli looked at her as though to say, "You've hit the jackpot." Ningxi's brain started to turn, and she said seriously, "Actually, you don't have to thank me. I saved little treasure, and in turn, he also saved me. If it wasn't for little treasure going out to find someone, I would have still been trapped inside, so we're even." Although she had indeed saved the young master, how could she dare ask for a reward? The more money one had, the more likely they would become deluded into thinking others were out to get them. Especially since this was the Elu family, one of the wealthiest and most prominent families around. It would be good enough they didn't think she had planned all this. Look at how wary Lu Tingxiao was when he watched her. To avoid potential problems, it was best to end all relations with them here. Ningxi thought her reply was faultless, but Lu Tingxiao still looked dissatisfied. Seeing this, she felt fearful. Did she say something wrong? Why was his face so scary? Brother, your expression is so scary. If I didn't know you were trying to repay her kindness, I would have thought you were here for revenge, Lu Jingli couldn't help saying, as he couldn't bear to see a beauty so frightened. He then turned to Ningxi to say, "My brother doesn't like to owe favors, so please just ask for something. Don't be so courteous." Were there people who would actually force requests out of others? Ningxi curled her lips. "I'm not being courteous, but really, there's no need. I've only said the truth. If you don't believe me, you can check." "No need," Lu Tingxiao said succinctly. His expression became impatient. Lu Jingli opened his mouth. "We've already checked the security camera in the bar storeroom. Little Treasure ran in there himself, and as for you, the manager has already admitted to locking you in there, so don't worry. We don't suspect you of anything. And you did save Little Treasure, so just request something." Amazing, now we're back to where we started. Finally, Ningxi ran out of ideas, and under Lu Tingxiao's chilling gaze, she gave in and said, "How about, you give me money?" Don't all rich people like to solve problems immediately with money? Lu Tingxiao should also be the type to think the same way. If she didn't ask for money, they might think she wanted one of the young masters instead. Right when she believed she had made the right request, Lu Tingxiao's expression turned even uglier. Ningxi was about to cry. Why did he have to be so taciturn? Can't you just say what you want to say? Would a few words kill you? Lu Jingli rubbed his nose as he translated, "My brother believes that giving money insults the other person." Ningxi's heart was howling, "No problem, just insult me." The Lu family was too unique. She really couldn't think of a reasonable request at the moment. It was at this point in their stalemate that Lu Tingxiao opened his mouth. "Marry me." Ningxi froze for a second, then began coughing heavily, almost choking herself to death on her own saliva. Cough, cough, cough. What did you say? After finally succeeding in stopping her coughs, she immediately looked at Lu Jingli. "Second master, please translate." But this time, it was not just Ningxi who was stumped. Even Lu Jingli was also dazed. "Brother, what did you mean?" This time, I really cannot translate. Ningxi suddenly had a light bulb moment. She asked in a halting tone, "Is it because I saved your son that you've decided to repay me with your body?" Lu Tingxiao inclined his head slightly and thought about it before he nodded. "You could say that." Ningxi felt like she was dreaming as she stared at the cold, expressionless face on the man before her. She held her forehead weakly. "Doctor, where's the doctor? I think I might have hit my head so hard that my brain is not working properly. I'm hallucinating." On the side, Lu Jingli's expression was guileless. "I didn't hit my head. Did my brain break down too?" At this very moment, Ningxi simply could not accept the reality before her. She had saved Little Treasure, so now his father wanted to repay her with his body. If this was anyone else, that would have been fine. If it was someone just a bit handsome, then it could be considered a lucky romantic encounter. But this person was Lu Tingxiao. When it came to looks, she was not bad, but Lu Tingxiao was the kind of beauty even the most gorgeous of women might have never seen before. If he just fancied her, she wouldn't be so surprised. If Lu Tingxiao only took her looks into consideration and wanted to play around with her, that was understandable. But he had said, "Marry me," which was the most frightening of all. Most importantly, "Don't you like men?" Ningxi blurted out. Bah ha ha ha. Lu Jingli was laughing so hard he fell over. Lu Tingxiao's face became black like the bottom of a pot, instantly filling the whole ward with a dark atmosphere. After a long time, Lu Jingli finally stopped laughing. If my brother likes men, where did little treasure come from? Surrogate pregnancy and artificial insemination? If my brother likes men, why would he offer you his body? To cover up his true sexual orientation? Ha ha ha. Brother, I really can't help you anymore. I also heard that the two of you are together. Ningxi's meek gaze shifted between the two brothers. Cough, cough, cough. Lu Jingli was so startled he choked. Bullshit, those tastes are too heavy for me. Though this young master is indeed very handsome, I could be both a lady killer and a man killer. At this time, a stormy person slowly rose from his chair, his long legs striding over towards Ningxi. Jingli, take little treasure out. Ah, brother, what are you going to do? Lu Tingxiao fixed his sleeves languidly. To prove my true sexual orientation to Miss Ning, seeing his expression darken, with a gaze which looked as though he wanted to devour her whole, Ningxi was so scared. She fell off the bed. She hid behind little treasure and almost wanted to hide under the bed. Mr. Lu, it has nothing to do with me. It's what other people are saying. I'm just repeating it. Also, you really don't have to thank me. But if you really want me to request something from you, then my request is that you don't ask me for a request again. Ah, I'm sorry. I have a really important audition right now, so I'll be leaving first. If fate shall have it, let us meet again then. Ningxi hastily finished speaking and was about to escape. But after having only taken a few steps, Lu Tingxiao said in a cold voice behind her, "Did I allow you to leave?" Ningxi was so scared her legs began to tremble. My life is over. A few seconds later, under Ningxi's ready-for-death gaze, Lu Tingxiao handed her a sheet of paper and a pen. Could I trouble Miss Ning to write a note for little treasure to prevent him worrying when he wakes up? That's it? She had survived a disaster. Of course, no problem at all. I can even write 10,000 words and that wouldn't be a problem. Ningxi breathed heavily with relief and picked up the pen to begin writing. After she was done writing, she immediately ran off in a frenzy. Watching her back as she left, the man's gaze turned contemplative, as though watching prey that had already been collared. After Ningxi left, Lu Jingli sidled over to his brother and bounced up and down. Brother, am I dreaming? Do you really like Ningxi? After all these years, even a dull piece of metal like you can be carved into a fine needle. You've never once fancied a girl. Even I, your own brother, was beginning to wonder if you were bent. The moment the word bent came out, his older brother cut him off. Shut up. Lu Jingli choked. His belly was filled with gossip and not being able to ask for the truth was really killing him. It was currently rush hour, so there was a traffic jam. Although Ningxi had rushed over, by the time she reached the building hosting the auditions, she was already late. Chang Li walked out of the building with a very happy Ning Shuiluo, who was surrounded by people congratulating her. From a distance, seeing Ningxi drenched in sweat as she came running, Ning Shuiluo looked at her with the exact same expression from 5 years ago. She looked at her as though she was looking at an ant. Ningxi watched Ning Shuiluo get into her van and immediately depart. However, Ningxi did not leave, and instead rushed into the building. It was still not too late. About halfway to her intended destination, she ran into a group of people who were chatting happily. They were the casting judges for the drama Less Than the World Greater Than. I'm sorry I'm late. Sir, Ningxi bowed deeply. Noticing Ningxi unexpectedly blocking their path, a few of the judges began to frown, expressing their displeasure. Was there anyone who liked tardy people? The assistant director grimaced. The auditions are already over. What's the point in rushing over now? Youngsters are getting worse and worse these days. I'm not here to audition for the female lead, Ningxi replied. Eh? If you're not here to audition for the female lead, then what did you come here to audition for? The screenwriter asked curiously. I want to audition for the second female lead, Meng Shang. From what I know, the last time there were auditions for the second female lead, you still weren't able to find someone suitable. After she finished speaking, she lifted her head. The moment Ningxi lifted her head, there was a 5-second silence, and the unpleasant expressions cleared. They could only notice the girl's red lips and white teeth, her black hair falling down to her waist. She wore a red collared dress that was very showy. However, it did not overshadow her beauty, but instead complimented her. She stood there quietly with an aura as deep as a forest, like she was a 1,000-year-old fox spirit, with bewitching eyes that could cause people to drown unwittingly in desire. She exuded a mature and seductive aura, yet seemed so innocent. Her eyes had a crystal-clear depth to them. "What's your name?" It wasn't until director Guo Qishong spoke that all the casting judges came back to their senses, as if from a beguiling dream. Ningxi. Director Guo shared glances with his assistant director, the producer, and the screenwriter before saying, "That sounds familiar. You're an artiste with Starlight Entertainment, correct? Go back and prepare. The role is yours. When we start filming, we'll contact you." "Thank you, director. I will work hard to prepare." Ningxi bowed her thanks. From the start, Ningxi's goal had been to become the second female lead. For this role, she had practiced for 3 months, working hard to understand Meng Changa's feelings and the impression she gave, in order to impress the judges with just one glance. Although she had endured a lot of hardships, it had been worth it. She had succeeded. After Ningxi left, Director Guo couldn't help but feel admiration. "We tried so hard to find an actress, but she found us instead. Even though this girl is signed with Starlight, she doesn't have enough work experience, and with such poor qualifications. I never once thought of her for the second female lead." Who knew in real life she would be so much more beautiful than in her photos? The screenwriter Yiling Long couldn't resist saying her most admirable qualities were her temperament and manners. Her gaze was absolutely perfect. Meng Changa was a domineering female general before she became the disastrous beauty that she is, and this girl perfectly captured this. She can be seductive without being vulgar, and can even maintain a sense of purity and detached intelligence. In the previous auditions for the role, all the actresses acted as though they were playing the queen of a brothel. I almost died of anger. "Ha ha ha ha, don't be angry. Haven't you finally found your long-awaited Chang?" At the same time, in the First People's Republic Hospital in B City, the VIP patient room which Little Treasure was staying in was in chaos. The kid was crouched atop the windowsill, his emotions extremely volatile. No matter what the doctors or nurses said, he wouldn't come down. Below Little Treasure, Lu Jingli tried to coax and calm him down, but the one being pleaded with didn't give in to his uncle's cajoling. Left with no choice, Lu Jingli could only make a call to the company to ask Lu Tengxiao to come back. "Brother, you came back. Your Little Treasure suddenly threw a tantrum. What happened?" Lu Tengxiao asked in a low voice. "I don't know what happened. When he woke up, he started trying to find someone. I thought maybe he was searching for Ningxi, so I told him that the pretty auntie had left. After saying that, he started going wild. Little Treasure really seems to like Ningxi. He wouldn't listen to anyone and became like this. This was the first time in a while that Little Treasure was this emotionally unstable." After hearing the whole story, Lu Tengxiao went to Little Treasure. The kid became alarmed and shrank back after noticing his approach. His eyes were reserved and cautious. He wouldn't even acknowledge his own father. Lu Tengxiao stopped 3 steps shy of Little Treasure and calmly said, "When your second uncle said auntie left, that's exactly what he meant. She is well physically and only left the hospital to go home. She did not die and leave this world, not like your grandmother who died and never came back. Do you understand?" Lu Tengxiao could only be this patient and speak so much with his son. Lu Jingli was speechless. "Are you kidding me? I only said 2 words, 'she left,' and he imagined so much." Actually, it wasn't strange at all for Little Treasure to have an erratic state of mind, since he had been traumatized and frightened by seeing Ningxi fall. After hearing Lu Tengxiao's explanation, Little Treasure stopped screaming and instead remained motionless on the windowsill. Lu Tengxiao then took out a note. "She wanted me to give this to you. Do you want to look at it?" Little Treasure paused, and like someone flicking on a switch, he raised his head and spread his arms, indicating for Lu Tengxiao to pick him up. "Lu Jingli, All the doctors and nurses present. Everyone had worked so hard to the point of near collapse, yet Lu Tingxiao had handled the situation with a single note? Before, when Lu Tingxiao had asked Ningxi to write a note, Lu Jingli had felt his brother's action was meaningless. However, he was now impressed. Lu Tingxiao picked up his son and sat down on the sofa before he handed the note to him. Little Treasure impatiently took the note. He had already long learned how to read and write. "Darling, thanks for saving me, you're amazing." Seeing the words on the note and the little drawing of a heart on the back, his eyes glittered, his face flushed red, and he couldn't help but smile, puffing his cheeks up. His face was undeniably adorable. Lu Jingli looked like he had seen a ghost. "Bullshit, am I going blind, brother?" Our Little Treasure actually smiled. I can't remember how long it has been since he last smiled. What did Ningxi write in that note? Lu Jingli tried to take a peek, but Little Treasure hid the note away like it was treasure. But Lu Jingli had already seen it. It was just a simple message, and yet it could bring such happiness to Little Treasure. This Ningxi was really not simple. Lu Tingxiao did not say anything, and only looked at his son with a gentle gaze. Now that Little Treasure was awake, Lu Tingxiao brought him home after canceling all his business matters just so he could accompany his son. Late at night, at the Platinum Residence, number 8, in a large, cold, and cheerless living room, two people, one big and one small, sat at a dining table facing each other, their expressions just as cold. Lu Tingxiao, eat. Little Treasure wouldn't listen. Lu Tingxiao, I'm saying it one last tea time. Little Treasure remained unmoved. Lu Tingxiao, do you think by refusing to eat, you can successfully threaten me? Little Treasure, like an old monk sitting in meditation, was completely immersed in his own little world, hardly reacting to anything from outside. The father and son pair continued to face off against each other. 1 hour later, Lu Tingxiao dialed his brother Lu Jingli's number. "Send Ningxi's address to me." In the end, starvation proved to really work. Lu Jingli was efficient and immediately sent Ningxi's address to his brother's cell phone, followed by a bunch of questions trying to satisfy his gossipy nature, which Lu Tingxiao of course ignored. This time, without Lu Tingxiao even saying a word, Little Treasure immediately followed suit after noticing his father pick up a coat and his car keys. Lu Tingxiao glanced down at his son walking next to him and had no choice but to pick him up in his arms. Just this once.